Do you think that bullfighting is unethical?
Yeah, I personally think it is. I know people I knew a bullfighter who definitely thought it wasn't and couldn't understand my point of view at all. And I couldn't understand his, and we just agreed to differ.
If someone said to you, but I get a lot of pleasure from bullfighting, from watching it, would that make it any more moral?
Well, I don't know. I get a lot of pleasure from raping women. I mean, it's
It
you
takes
know,
it down a dangerous path, I guess.
yeah. I kind of I can't see many people subscribing to that. Put it that way.
Do you see any ethical issue with bullfighting?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. That I think just goes under the realm of animal cruelty. I mean, I think competition is fine, but would I want to be in a competition where I was getting stabbed? Maybe not so much. So, in that sense, yeah, I think sentient beings kind of just deserve the same respect as other sentient beings.
What if someone was to say that it's part of a culture, it's a tradition?
Well, yeah, that was actually the argument the guy I met a few years ago. But it's not actually that deeply embedded. Frankly, it's only a few hundred years in culture. I mean, it's bullfighting specifically, but if there are other cultural practices, I don't know, genital mutilation's a good example, perhaps. I, I think all practices should be open for reappraisal, perhaps.
And if someone was to try and justify bullfighting by saying that it gave them a lot of pleasure, what do you think of that argument? Would that hold up?
No, because I would also get pleasure from maybe watching somebody who stabs bulls getting stabbed, but I don't think I would have the right to insist on that.
Like, what about farmed animals then? Do you think that it is wrong to cause an animal to suffer for meat?
I think to suffer, it's wrong. To exist is the counter argument, I always think. They wouldn't exist if they weren't being farmed. They lead a more arduous life in the wild.
To give you an analogy, what if someone was to say that we bred these bulls for the purpose of bullfighting? They wouldn't live otherwise. What about like the argument that people make where I really enjoy the taste of meat, and therefore it's ethical to buy the product?
I mean, ethics is always going to be an individual choice. So if it's ethical to you, go for it.
What if I was to say it's ethical for me to like slap that woman in the face? Would you say, if it's ethical for you?
No, there's a victim in that equation, yeah.
Is there a victim when I buy meat?
I would say so.
So I think if you're doing something that you might say is part of a culture, part of a tradition, part of history, but it is causing suffering, maybe we need to just re-examine, redevelop that culture.
What do you think the average life of a chicken is like? Do you think that they enjoy a positive well-being, or do you think it's mostly consisting of suffering?
I think it's the analogy. I have thought that a friend I go skiing with who's a chicken farmer. He rears chickens from hatchlings to slaughter, and he said it's in his interest to make sure they're generally happy chickens, otherwise they die. I mean, it's quite a brutal calculation, like how many deaths per thousand per day, and the less care he provides for the chickens, the higher the death rate is, less economic it is. So that they generally try to keep happy chickens.
The thing that comes to mind there for me is that if that's the bar that we're setting, you know, they need to be. I need to keep them a certain level of well-being, otherwise they're going to die. It's like there's probably a huge scope to do a lot of harm and make them very sad before they die. You know, how bad you have to treat, how unhappy does a human have to be before they die? I mean, you could do all kinds of things to animals, I guess. Cruel things like debeaking them, cutting their beaks off without anesthesia, cramming them into cages. You could do these things to not giving them like hay or stimulation. We could. I'd probably say that we could probably torture animals significantly for several months without them dying.
I try to be vegetarian. I'm definitely not a vegetarian. I do eat meat. I do enjoy meat. But I know that I am ethically making a wrong decision there. I mean, absolutely. I think veganism, I think they have the ethical high ground on the argument.
I think humans are sacred in some spiritual way beyond that of a cow. Yeah.
How do you know that? I guess is my question. Like, what have you seen in the world that has made you think that, okay, humans are more sacred than non-humans?
Bit intangible, really.
It's one of those hard to put your finger on thoughts.
What is the difference, do you think, between, say, me and a pig that would justify doing it to the pig but not me?
I don't think you've been grown for your meat. Is perhaps the point.
If I was actually to start breeding some humans myself for the purpose of eating them, would that make it more ethical for me to harm them or kill them?
No, I'd feel very uncomfortable with that even happening.
Do you think that human suffering matters more than animal suffering?
Ultimately, yes. I think to say that we're not like speciesist or anything like that is ridiculous. Of course we are. If I had a choice between killing a baby and killing an animal, there's no choice what the answer is going to be. So yeah, no.
Why does the human suffering matter more? Like, what is it about the animal that they're missing, or what is the difference there that you see?
Honestly, right now, I would say the truth is communication and a fundamental connection. I can connect with you by speaking with you. I can see that we maybe have similar values, or at least that you could express disdain at something I do. You know, an animal, not so much. So maybe that gives us that little bit of a difference. Yeah.
If I was to find some humans who couldn't communicate with us, so say we found some mentally disabled humans who lacked the capacity to communicate with us, maybe they had the intelligence of a pig, would they matter any less morally, or would their suffering matter less?
Ooh, yeah. So no, that's a good point. So let's scratch the ability to communicate.
The pig can't be a part of the decision-making process.
Right.
Whereas people are individuals.
That pig is always going to be a pig, whereas that human child that you're raising could become a doctor or prime minister or, something where they might make a change for those pigs in the future.
If I was to find a human being, perhaps like a mentally disabled human being, who didn't have that potential, who wasn't able to communicate with us and wasn't able to play any role in that decision-making process, let's say they have the intelligence of a pig, would it be any more ethical to harm that child? Or would you say it's irrelevant?
Sort of irrelevant.
I think some people would even say like we have more of an obligation to help them because they're vulnerable and to look after them.
Yeah.
By that reasoning, would it not be more wrong to harm a pig because they're vulnerable, because they can't communicate? I appreciate that I'm putting you on the spot here, and like these are some difficult questions.
That's a good point.
Do you think that human suffering matters more than animal suffering?
Yeah.
And how would we justify that?
Again, it goes back to that intangible knowing that humans have like a connection. You always want to help out another human.
What if someone was what if we went back a few hundred years and there's someone saying white people matter more than black people, and I said, why do you think that is? And they said, well, it's not really tangible, but I just have like this intuition that I have this desire to help white people, or black people I just don't feel it. There seems to be something missing. How would you argue against that if someone said that? I share your intuition. I have the intuition that if I was to see an animal get killed and I saw a human get killed, I'd probably have the same intuition that it's worth to kill a human. I guess the problem is basing our morals on intuition seems problematic when we look back throughout human history, and it seems to have never been a time where we weren't doing something terrible and people had the intuitions that it was okay because it was a social norm. They didn't really question it. It seems like it would almost be arrogant to think, okay, at this point in time, when I happen to be alive, we've got it all solved. We're not doing anything atrocious. Yeah. It seems that statistically speaking, it seems likely that there's something atrocious happening that we're not really aware of or not really seeing.
I do think just being born a human, you do deserve these fundamental rights that we've created. I mean, I'm all about universal basic income, something that we need to do right now. YouTube followers of this guy do it. Yeah. So yeah, I think being born a human just gives you these fundamental inalienable rights. And it's and I don't think animals have that, it's tricky.
It's interesting because it feels like we need to be able to point to like a trait difference here. Otherwise, it kind of seems like arbitrary, like we're appealing to group. Like for instance, it seems analogous, and I know this might sound like controversial, but it seems analogous to saying there's something about being born a man where you just have these fundamental rights and there's this superiority. And I'm not sure what it is, but there's this thing.
I think they'll look at this period as a shifting point. Just the growth of veganism, the growth of vegetarianism, if you just chart veganuary on Google Trends, it's insane the growth it's getting. This is the moment.
Do you think that being vegan and living a vegan lifestyle yourself would be more in line with your own morals about not causing harm?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think that if, say, the UK were to turn vegan, do you think that would be a better world with less suffering?
Probably. Is that can I hedge my bets? Yeah, it would.
And I don't think asking a human being to just like constantly just be killing animals, grinding little baby animals. I don't think there's a human alive that doesn't think a baby animal's cute, you know. And slaughterhouse people who work there included, but they have to desensitize themselves to these things.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, if we're going big, it all comes back to universal basic income. If people could just afford to have a basic income, they wouldn't need to do, you know, difficult jobs or jobs that have trauma attached to them.
And I think I probably live a more vegan lifestyle than I did when I was 16, let's say.
Right.
But I ain't going to stop eating bacon. Full stop, you know.
Yeah.
It's that I can't miss my bacon sandwich with a hangover.
Oh, because of the taste.
I don't know. Can I say it's a combination of things? I mean, tradition, the fact it clears the hangover better than any other food. I don't know whether it's my belief or whatever.
Tradition as in how we kept people as slaves and how bullfighting is a tradition.
I did say that, you know, any heritage or ethnic tradition should be open to reappraisal.
I'd love to be a vegan, you know, but I do love milk in my coffee, and I do like the odd omelet, so it is, you know, it is tricky for me. But yeah, overall, yes. I mean, it would be a difficult transition, probably not one that's going to happen in our generation. But could I see it happening eventually? Absolutely. And I do think it would be a better society.
Right.
Yeah.
Those things you mentioned about like you really like the milk and the coffee. I mean,
Yeah.
I get that because I love the taste of these products, not just milk, but also like meat and cheese and eggs. I used to really love these products and really enjoy consuming them.
Yeah.
But do you think that the pleasure we get from the product in any way would justify the harm to the animals?
No, absolutely not. I mean, because again, I think this constantly keeps moving towards the same idea of
Universal basic income. Joking.
yes, 100% yes, the universal basic income.
Do you think that being vegan
Yeah.
would be more in line with your own morals?
I think yes, 100%. I think everybody wants to genuinely be kind. Everybody wants to, you know, do no harm. So yeah, I think so.